So welcome to the second of 5 webinars in my Dealing with COVID-19 series. This is one that I'm really looking forward to presenting to you. Of course, I'm looking forward to presenting them all. Last week was fun. This week is probably more fun, and unless you're going to the health food store with your shopping list in hand, it may even be more actionable. So as you can see on the screen, this is how to cope with the psychological impact of COVID-19, social distancing, and warped reality. As per last time, all of these slides except one now exist on slideshare.net/LKDMD, no periods. slideshare.net/LKDMD. So you can see the presentation right there, and you can click through all the slides so you can see what we've been talking about. Now, I promised to talk about Sparky tonight, and so I thought I would show you poor Sparky's picture and let you take that in. Sparky is getting mentally and emotionally exhausted because of the complaining of his human, Linda. And of course, this is supposed to be a funny cartoon, but this happens to all of us if we're around people that are complaining and whining and down on themselves and down on life and down on society and down on unemployment and so forth. It gets a little painful. And so tonight, I'm going to be talking about how to become aware of what you're actually doing inside of your head. I'm going to share some interesting concepts with you. So just a quick reorientation about what's been going on. Here's 6 weeks of COVID-19 impact. And you can see from March 13 to April 24th, this was done last week, there's been a steady increase of significant impact on business. And what that means is some businesses are going out of business, like J. Crew, which filed for bankruptcy this morning. Some people are losing their jobs. In most cases, I think, unless people are in the top 0.5 to 2%, there's some concern about money and income and retirement, and it's stressful. So one of the things that I had been doing recently is I've been following the work of Dan Burrus. I mentioned him last time. You can look at all of his 5 webinars at burrus.com/hope. But this was a blog post he put out March 18, and you can see the headline there: "In uncertain times, you have more control than you realize." And he went on to say the COVID-19 pandemic has suppressed our positive, innovative mentality as a species, sending us into a primordial tailspin of trying to restore the status quo. Due to fear, we are finding ourselves in a real-world dystopian society where individuals prepare for the end of the world. That's the way a lot of people are living these days. And my thesis tonight is you don't have to do that. So let us begin with the famous firewalking made famous by Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins probably did more to popularize NLP and put it on the map than anybody. Bander and Grindler came up with it after modeling various extremely effective therapists, and they put it together. But Tony Robbins made it dramatic and sellable, and he had people walk on hot coals. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to point out to you for this picture. First of all, those coals are red hot. Secondly, this guy is not looking at the coals. If you look at the coals and you think, boy, those coals are probably really hot, then your little piggies down there are going to get toasted like marshmallows overdone on a campfire. Instead, what someone does doing this firewalk activity is they look straight ahead and they chant to themselves, cool moss, cool moss, cool moss. That's like they're walking on cool moss. And then you walk briskly across the coals. And if you do it that way, no burns, no roasted little piggies. Uh, but the concept of changing of state, most of us in our right mind, in our normal state, our day-to-day state, would not be able to walk across hot coals. You have to put yourself in the zone. You have to look ahead. You have to be thinking positively about it, and then you can do it. Now, this is not going to be a program about walking over hot coals or doing fire walk, but it is going to have various techniques, including NLP, which are concepts of NLP, which are useful. So this is a concept of NLP that whatever you focus on expands. That's so true. And there are 4 citations right there on the screen. The third one is kind of an interesting one. It's the Don't Think of a Blue Tree essay. So right now, if you try not to think of a blue tree, you will think of a blue tree. The only way to get around that is the blue tree comes up and then, oh, I'm not supposed to be thinking about that. So then you think of a green tree. But don't think of a blue tree. You're going to focus on it. So what's in your mind is important, and what you focus on will expand. One of the concepts that I like is a good turn of phrase, and this is the NLP principle of well-formedness. I had never heard of this before. They didn't teach this to me in my Mayo psychiatric residency, but it's actually a very interesting concept. So I'll break it down this way. In your life, you've got certain results that you're dealing with. There are reasons for those results. We all have our reasons. And the results right now could be, I'm out of work. And the reasons could be, well, I didn't study hard in school and I got a crappy job and I was expendable and they fired me. So if you get stuck with those reasons, then your results will always flow from the reasons. The other way to look at it is the cause and effect concept. And NLPers ask, do you want to be at cause or do you want to be at effect? Effect is what the world and life is doing to you. Being at cause is what you're doing to get your affairs in order and get going and stay positive in life. And we're going to be talking tonight about how to get at cause and work through these things. So in terms of well-formedness, here is the concept of well-formedness, and you'll see where the cause and effect comes in. A well-formed outcome is a term for an outcome one wishes to achieve. It meets certain conditions designed to avoid unintended cost or consequences and resistance to achieving the goal, resulting from internal conflicting feelings or thoughts about the outcome. And we continue. Thus, a high-quality outcome is more than a vague wish or goal. It is an objective or goal that is integrated with all aspects of one's life, including morals, ethics, relationships, finances, health, body, and so forth, and has a process of accomplishment that respects and supports the current desirable circumstances in one's life. Now, that's a whole lot in there, but what I want you to get out of this is it's an objective or goal that is integrated with all aspects of your life, and there are the aspects, and it has a process of accomplishment. That means you can start, you can work through the process, and then you can do it. And finally, it respects and supports the current desirable circumstances in one's life. And if you don't have desirable circumstances, then you need to be using this to conceptualize what your desirable circumstances are so you can move that way. And so if you have a well-formed objective, results that you want, effects that you want, then you can go back and you can do the groundwork to get you there. So we'll talk about how to do the groundwork tonight. And finally, one caution about this presentation. This is something the NLPers like to say, the map is not the territory. In fact, it's one of the presuppositions of NLP. And so if you think concretely about your experience with this, maybe you've been in a long car drive and you've been using a map to figure out where you're going and how you're going to get there. And the map is a real thing and it's useful, but it's not the territory. The map is not the geography. What I am presenting tonight, this map is not the territory. And you are going to have to use the map, which I'm going to present, these concepts tonight, to make your own decisions about your journey. So this presentation, as entertaining as I can make it, with as many jokes as I can tell, will not make you better. You have to do the work. And in terms of making you better, we'll talk about what Jim Rohn had to say about it. But things may not be as bad as they seem to you at the moment, and I'll show you an example from one of my patients that just came up. It's either last Thursday or last Friday, and I have her permission to share, and you will almost not believe it. One final thing in terms of fundamentals of NLP. Alfred Korzybski said almost all psychological problems are the result of the inability of a person to traverse logical levels. In other words, to think right in your head, to get from point A to point B and not go off on these tangents and spinning circumlocutions in your brain to where you just get stuck and you don't make progress. So don't get stuck. Don't have difficulty traversing the logical levels, and I will show you tonight how you can do that. So with that being said as a warm-up, let's begin with a discussion of really the four things that have been known and practiced in psychiatry. So, and by the way, four-part psychiatry. I used to be a music student. I had to learn how to write four-part harmony, harder than it sounds. And what I liked about it is you worked with the soprano, the alto, the tenor, and the bass, and all of those parts had to be integrated as you move through the piece. Similarly, with psychiatry, it has to be integrated. So Freud, way back in the day, began to get interested in the unconscious mind and neurotic conflicts. And Freud talked about the conscious and the unconscious. And a good way of thinking about the unconscious mind is you can't see it, you can't talk to it, you can't query it. All you can do is look at what it does in your life. And in that way, it's like walking in brilliant sunlight coming in from an oblique angle down close to the horizon, and you're walking in front of a white wall over here. And you can be making symbols with your hands or something, and if you look at the wall, you will see those symbols. In this metaphor, you are the unconscious mind. You're doing this, and you're consciously perceiving it over here. So when you're looking at the unconscious mind, it's you can only look at symptoms, at effects that the unconscious mind is creating in your head. We'll come back to that. Next, the behaviorist said, forget Freud and that unconscious conscious stuff. It's what matters. What you do is what matters. And you change your behavior and change your psychology. So for those of us suffering with financial loss in COVID-19, it's, well, you just get up, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and go apply for jobs. But if you feel lousy, you're not going to be feeling like doing that. So there's some limits to behavioral interventions. Cognitive therapists say, hey, forget that behavior stuff. Just focus on your cognitive distortions. And I'm going to review the 10 that David Burns had in his book tonight, and we'll talk about those cognitive distortions, and then I'll gift wrap them for you in terms of the 10 cognitive distortions as they pertain to COVID-19 and social isolation. And finally, the Prozac generation, the neuroscientists, the psychiatrists that love all their potions and prescriptions and so forth say, Freud was stupid, behaviorists were stupid, cognitive therapists were stupid. Hey, it's the neurotransmitters, baby. That's where it's at. So forget all that other stuff and let's just tune up the neurotransmitters. And we will be talking about tuning up the neurotransmitters next week. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the behaviorists, the cognitive, and the cognitive therapists, basically. And also this concept called positive psychology and learned optimism, which is really interesting. So here are the wrong and the right ways to do behavioral therapy. The wrong way is to mindlessly focus on the behavior. Just focus on the behavior, focus on the behavior. Just get busy, just fill out your job applications, just spend all day on Indeed.com, keep going, keep going, keep going. I would propose that there are not ABCs of behavior, there are the ABCDEFGs, and I wrote them up in this chapter in the book, Work Smarter, Not Harder, called Without Your Head, You're Dead. It was published 16 years ago. Seems like an eternity. Here are the ABCDEFGs of behavioral management. A, you must be aware of what's going on. You must be aware of what you're doing to yourself in your head. You need to be aware of your beliefs, your conceptualization. When you are doing behavioral therapy and trying to improve, you do it and you document it. And if you do that, you can legitimately expect results, and you can also expect failure. As Zig Ziglar used to say, failure is an event. It's not your destiny. Yesterday was a closed book, and tomorrow it's a whole new world, and today is yours. So forget about failure as a catastrophic reversal. It's a useful input. If you fail, try again. And then G, go back and keep trying. Those are the ABCDEFGs of how you work on your behavior. Now, as I told you, Jim Rohn was an interesting guy, and this will give you kind of a taste of how hardcore he was. He told people, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. And that's kind of provocative, but he didn't just leave us with that. He told us how to get better. And one of his key concepts was using a journal as a problem-solving tool. Now, if you'll remember, excuse me as I go back to this, awareness in blue. The journal is an extremely good idea to be, or a technique to become aware of what you're doing in your head and your cognitive distortions, which we'll go over in a second. And Rohn said, and this is my paraphrase, the solution to your problems materialize between your head and the page that you're working on. He also said, forget about typing it, use a pen, write it, because it slows your brain down and keeps you focused on exactly what you're talking about in your head. And you can get these audios, how to use a journal, from jimrohn.com or amazon.com. They are outstanding. I routinely recommend this to my patients, and I routinely have them start working on a journal. It's been extremely helpful. By the way, journaling is not, dear diary, today I had a good day. I went to the beach with my dad. That is not what this is about. This is, you're looking at the journal and you say, these are the things that are bothering me. I'm unemployed, laid off, bills are mounting up, kids are driving me crazy. I talked with somebody today, there were 3 people under her roof that were doing distance learning for their schooling. She was one of them. So these are the things that are driving people crazy. So become aware of them, write them down, awareness, write them down, and then we'll talk about what you can do to change your outlook on it. Now, this is one of my favorite books. I routinely give it to my patients, and I tell them, forget reading the book, just flip to the chapter on cognitive distortions and learn all 10, and that'll be the gist of the book. And David Burns only had 10 cognitive distortions in his book. Here they are: all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, mental filter, disqualifying the positive, jumping to conclusions, catastrophizing, emotional reasoning, making should statements. As Wayne Dyer would have said, you're just shoulding all over yourself, labeling and mislabeling, and personalization. You say, well, that's all very well and good, but I don't know those concepts. How am I going to use that? So I broke it down for you. 2 pages. Here's all or nothing thinking. My bank account is dropping. I'm laid off. This is it. It's the end of the world. All or nothing. I've either got all my money or nothing. That's not a very good way to live. Overgeneralization. I've lost my job. There are no other jobs I can get that I am qualified for. Are you sure about that? Are there other jobs that you could qualify for if you just took a little training? Overgeneralization. This one is the mental filter, ignoring all the good things in life and focus only on the negative. And I'll tell you the story of this patient that I saw last week and then what I got back from her over the weekend. Mental filter. Jumping to conclusions. I talked about this a little bit last week, and I talked about the way that you could tell if you were conducting a cognitive distortion in your head if you could say, and I'll use me, I, Lewis Cady, in my all-knowing, omniscient, godlike wisdom, know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'll always be poor. That's the fortune teller concept. I'll always be poor. Or mind reading is, I know what they're thinking about me. They're thinking I'm a loser. They're thinking I can't get a job. They're thinking I'm, whatever. That's mind reading and fortune teller concepts. Do not do that to yourself in your head. And finally, catastrophize. This is like, if you go up to my bank account, it's dropping, I'm laid off, this is it. You can really take it to the bank, not in a good way, by saying, my bank account is dropping, I'm laid off, they're gonna cut off my power, they're gonna put me out of my home or my apartment, and I know I'm going to end up as a bag lady driving a grocery cart from my local grocery store around with all of my belongings in it, like a homeless person. That's catastrophizing. It's also associated with fortune telling. So that's just the first 5. Here are the last 5. Emotional reasoning. I feel it, therefore it must be true. I feel terrible about the loss of income, job, apartment, home, prestige. Therefore, I know it's not going to get better. So this is kind of combined with fortune telling. Here's the should statements. I should have sold my stocks at the market top. I should have had more of an emergency fund built up. I should have been in a better job. I should have worked harder in school. I should have married that woman. I should have divorced that woman. I should have married that guy. I should have divorced that guy. See, I'm trying to be equal opportunity here. So just should have done this, should have done that, should have done this, should have done that. It's not going to do you any good. It is gone. It's in the past. So it is now time to look at what you're going to do about the present and the future. Labeling and mislabeling. So labeling is where you don't label the error, you label yourself, like as a loser. Like, I lost my job because I wasn't in a particular position that had more job security, and therefore I'm a loser. I'm a loser. I know I'm a loser. That's labeling. Don't do that to yourself. Be objective. Say, I lost the job because of such and such, period. That's it. Don't go on and label yourself as a loser, unless you just want to be miserable and stay miserable. And finally, personalization. I'm the reason that things are in such a mess. It's all my fault. Forgetting that COVID-19 is from a bat in China. Although, if you listen to some of the conspiracy theorists, it was all, some plot by these wicked people. And I'm not even going to tell you what the conspiracy theorists think that COVID-19 came from. But you forget all about it and say, I'm the reason that this is happening. It's my doings. No, it's not. It came from outside of you. Maybe you weren't positioned the best that you could be, but the difficulty came from outside of you. So don't personalize. And this personalization concept comes in very handy in a form of therapy and a form of psychology called positive psychology. Now, this guy I heard on a webinar last week. He goes by Mitchell. I don't even know what his first name is, probably William, but on the cover of his book, it's W. Mitchell. I want to point out a couple of things. Number one, this man is not going to be a poster boy for anybody talking about good skincare. And the reason is he was horribly burned over about 90% of his body. The reason that part of his face is not burned is that he was wearing a motorcycle helmet at the time that he laid his motorbike down on the streets of San Francisco. The gas cap popped off. He gas spewed all over him. There was a spark as he slid across the pavement, and he was basically set on fire like a human fireball. You'll also note that he's holding a statue. That's the Cabot Roberts statue of NSA, National Speakers Association. It's the preeminent award. There's nothing higher than that for a professional speaker. And you'll also notice that he's holding it with his burned off fingers. Now, let me tell you about Mitchell. First, he was horribly burned. Then he started getting around, and so he took up flying. Then he was flying his airplane, and one day he didn't check the gas, and he ran out of gas and crashed. And then he became a paraplegic. So now he's burned over 90% of his body, and has looks that would frighten children, and he's in a wheelchair. So this is what Mitchell says. He says, you know, in the past there maybe were 10,000 things that I could do, and now there are 9,000 things that I can do. So he spends his time focusing on the 9,000 that he can do and not the 1,000 that he can't. If you think you've got problems, just imagine being horribly burned over 90% of your body and then ending up in a wheelchair for life with no hope of ever getting out of it. So focus on what you can do rather than what you can't do. Focus on what you are rather than on what you are not. And we'll talk about that as we continue. This is his book. I've got it. I've read it cover to cover. It was actually featured on PBS. You should get it. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. Go over to Amazon and order it. In fact, you might even be able to go to Mitchell's website, buy it, and have him autograph it for you. This man is one of my heroes. Now let me tell you about the strange peripatetic psychological journey of Martin Seligman. Peripatetic means kind of wandering around from here to there. And this is Martin Seligman being emphatic, I guess, at the University of Pennsylvania, where he is still a tenured professor. This is what happened with Martin Seligman. Like many psychologists that were doing research, he worked with animal models. And he began studying this concept of learned helplessness. And the way you study learned helplessness is you put these dogs in a shock box where there's shock on one side and no shock on the other. And you shock their little tootsies and they don't like it and they look for other opportunities and they jump to the no shock area, which is safe for a while. But then you can shock them on the shock side and suddenly the no shock side, now that shocks them as well. And you do that a few times and they will learn that both sides will shock them. And then you put them back on the shock side and you turn the no shock off. So there's no shock. And then you shock their little feet. And if the dog has figured out that there's no winning, I'm going to get my Tootsie shocked wherever I go. You can't beat City Hall. You can't fight the government. COVID-19 is going to wipe me out. Then the dog will just sit there, even though if the dog jumps, he'll get away from the shock. So that's the learned helplessness animal model. Now, Seligman looked at learned helplessness in people and asked himself, why do some people become learned helpless? They exist in a state of learned helplessness. And why do some people not exist in a state of learned helplessness? How do they get past the adversity? And so Seligman came up with the 3 Ps and founded positive psychology. And he wrote about this in his book, Learned Optimism, which I strongly recommend. Now, however, just like David Burns, when I tell people get the book, but only pay attention to the 10 cognitive distortions, there are only 3 key concepts and 6 other boxes that you need to learn how to develop learned optimism. Seligman said that optimists and pessimists work through their life with these concepts of, is it permanent, is it pervasive, and is it personalized to them? So here's what the optimist says. The optimist, when confronted with adversity, says it's temporary, and so they bounce back fast. Pervasiveness, they compartmentalize the bad and they're open and aware of the good. In other words, this is bugging me right now, but I'm not going to spend my life thinking about it. If you want to see or read the best description of compartmentalization, look at Taipan by James Clavell. It was also made into a major TV miniseries probably 10 to 15 years ago. Starred Pierce Brosnan as a man from England who became the Taipan, or head of an organization. And as this book goes on, it's just one thing after another, after another, after another, after another, and he's going to be ruined. He's going to lose all his money and maybe go to jail, and it's just terrible. But the Taipan is able to compartmentalize it and keep going, and in the end, he lives happily ever after. The personalization says, it's not my fault, the fault is outside of me. Yeah, I don't have a job, but I didn't create COVID-19. I didn't create the R naught factor of COVID-19. The problem is outside of me. It's not my fault. So it's temporary. I'm not going to think about it, and it's not my fault anyway. That's how the optimist exists. Now, here's the way the pessimists do it. It's permanent. I lost my job. I lost my money. I lost my house. I'm ruined. I'm going to be a bag lady. I'm going to be pushing a shopping cart. It's permanent. I'll never crawl out of this. It's permanent. I can't believe this. Over and over and over in their head. And then they let this become a pervasive concept in their life. That is, failure in one area of life, therefore, equals failure in all levels. And they say, it's my fault. I am responsible. That's the difference between an optimist and a pessimist. Three concepts: permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. You say, well, that's all very well and good, and I'm glad Seligman came up with that, but what's the relevance of that for me, and what do I do with it? I'm about to tell you. This is where you want to live, in the optimist world. Now, in the book, Work Smarter, Not Harder, when I wrote the chapter, Without Your Head, You're Dead, I talked about the 5 Ps. And the 5 Ps of personal responsibility are pertinent, personal, proactive, positive, and present tense. This is the way you want to look through your activity in terms of what you're going to be doing. So let's go over this. There's the book. Pertinent. What are the facts? I mean, was it all you're doing? Or was it a bat from China and everything else is a downstream effect from there? What's pertinent? What are the facts? You need to ask that question, and you need to answer it. Personal. This is what you can personally do about the situation. You cannot make COVID-19 go away. You can't create a vaccine unless you're one of the brilliant scientists that are working on it. Can't create a vaccine. Can't keep your family from getting infected if they get infected. But what can you personally do about the situation? Then you get proactive. You take action. You make a list. A really good place to make a list is in your journal. And then you think on paper. And a really good place to think on paper is in your journal. And the reason it's good to think on paper with a pen is that it focuses your mind to slow down and stop obsessing and just spinning like a cat chasing its tail or a dog chasing its tail around and around and around. And you have to stop. You have to write something down. Having the pen in the hand basically calls the question. It says, what are you going to write down? How can you be proactive? What's the next action? Positive. You need to state your goals and objectives in the positive, not I'm never going to be broke again. Not I'm not going to I'm not going to stay unemployed, because your subconscious, remember, your subconscious or your unconscious hears that and says, unemployed, he's going to be unemployed. No, you want to state your goals positively, as in, I am now employed in a new position, or I am in the process of getting employed in a new position, not I am moving away from bankruptcy. Keep it positive. And present tense, you do it now. It's not I'm going at some point in the future, maybe I'll get a job. It's I'm getting a job now. Present tense, pertinent, personal, proactive, positive, and present tense. You say, that's still a little nebulous. You got to break it down for me further. So here's an example. Pertinent. I have lost my job and am behind on my rent. Did you cause it? Because if you didn't, it's not pertinent. It's pertinent in the sense that you need cash, but it's not germane to the cause of your difficulty. So don't personalize it. So personal, this is where you write the action steps you can personally use. So for example, look for work, talk to the bank, take out a loan, live with your parents. I remember in 2008, I saw Jim Cramer on TV on CNBC, and Jim Cramer, he was answering questions from callers. And one caller said, I've got terrible financial issues. I'm about to lose the business. I'm about to lose my house. What can I do? And Cramer said, sell the house, but save the business, and move in with your parents if you have to. You can always buy a new house, but you can't always buy a new business. So that's something personal you can do. Sell the house, save the business, move in with your parents, sell your second car. Dave Ramsey, in his book, Total Financial Makeover, talks about things that you can do if you're bleeding cash with credit card bills up to here and you're trying to get control of your finances. Be proactive. Heck, get on Indeed.com. Every member of my front office staff, including my medical assistant, that is just incredible and helped me put in pellets in the backside of a guy that needed testosterone supplementation today. I hired them all from Indeed.com. It's a whole lot cheaper than putting an ad in the paper. Trust me, employers are looking for you there. So if you're not using it, then you're just not trying. Update your resume, network with your buddies, read the ads. Come on, let's do something proactive instead of sitting and complaining like Sparky's owner did to him that got him so distraught. Positive, state your goals and objectives in the positive. I have a job. I have achieved employment. I now am making such and such per money. What I'm talking about right now is the most basic levels, but you can do this. Let's say you got plenty of money, you live in a nice house, you got a good job, but there's this person at work that's just really getting your goat, or your boss is a little bit difficult to deal with. I have one female patient whose boss calls her into her office to help her with things on the computer or her iPhone or iPad because the boss can't figure it out. And it just totally interrupts my patient's workday. So figure out what you're going to do about that. State your goals and objectives in the positive. Pertinent, personal, proactive, positive. And present tense, you do it now. That's an example of the 5 Ps. Here's how to reprogram yourself. And this is in the chapter that I wrote. This is the ultimate reprogramming yourself guide. So first of all, you have to become aware of the cognitive distortions you are composing in your mind. And just look at the David Burns list again. Go to slideshare.com/LKDMD. Go over all of those distortions. See what you're doing. Become aware of what you're doing in your head. Then, this one time, you can write down your warped belief. Your warped belief may be, I lost my job, I'm a loser. Write it down. Write the warped belief so you can see it in paper, in writing, right in front of you. Then you process it. Then you have to look at that and sit with it and say, well, really? Is that really my fault? And hopefully you'll come up to the conclusion, nope, wasn't my fault. It was outside of my control. It was not personal. It was something outside of my control. Then you'll be living in the optimist category of positive psychology. This is where it gets interesting. Then you write down the countervailing idea. So the warped belief is, I'm a loser. The countervailing idea is, I'm a success. Now, frequently I suggest to my patients, and I did in this chapter, that you write down things to support it. So, for example, if you say, I'm a loser, and you can put in parentheses when you're writing it down, because I lost my job. So the countervailing idea is not, I'm not a loser. Remember, it has to be in the positive. It's, I'm a winner. I'm employed, open parenthesis, and the reason is I have done such and such. That makes it concrete. Now, after you work through this, you get rid of your list that has all of the warped beliefs. You can burn it if you want, but you keep the list of the countervailing ideas. And then this is the ultimate. You take your smartphone, and almost all of them have a recording app on them. And if they don't, you can download it from the iTunes store, the Google Android store, and you record the countervailing ideas. And then after you do that, after each one, you give yourself a pause. And then when you're in your car, when you're showering, when you're shaving in the morning, you hear the countervailing affirmation and you repeat it after it. You hear it and you repeat it. You're involving your senses in reprogramming yourself. And you know, you say, well, that just seems a little bit freaky. I can't believe that would really work. It's just too woo-woo for me. Well, let me ask you, if you get off of this webinar tonight and you sit around and you say, life sucks, I suck, my job sucks, my unemployment sucks, I hate being under the roof with my kids, they suck. How good do you think you're going to be feeling after you do that for a while? Probably not good. And the take-home message is what you do in your head affects the way you feel. So we know that you can make yourself feel much worse if you just affirm, or as Tony Robbins would say, you incant these negative dysfunctional beliefs. Whereas if you are positive and you have these positive countervailing ideas and you say it and you believe it and you think about it and you repeat it back and you just drill it into yourself over and over and over again, then you will be able to reprogram yourself. And one of the subtopics that I had on this was how to give yourself $5,000 worth of mental health care in 1 hour. And this is the concept, because if you don't do this, there will be somebody like me or another therapist that will be happy to take your money. Well, I shouldn't say like me. Another therapist that will be happy to take your money and just keep letting you brood about this stuff forever and ever and ever, and never getting out of your head, never telling you to write it down, never telling you, okay, this is what you need to do, never talking about positive psychology. If you came to see me, I'm more like Jim Rome. Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. I mean, come on, let's get going with it. Let's go. So record the countervailing ideas. Here's an example of reprogramming yourself. Emotional upset. I will never get another job. That's an emotional state. It's also a fortune-telling error. You process it. You say that's probably warped. It's fortune-telling. I'm capable, and eventually people are going to be hiring. I may have to train and work in another area, but I'm sure I can get a position. Here's the countervailing idea. And notice when you read it, it's personal, positive, and present tense. And the countervailing idea is, I am working in another job. And then you can describe it as you wish. Only record the countervailing ideas with a space that you can say it back, and do it on your smartphone. Here's another example: emotional upset. I'll go broke and lose the house. Process it. It's catastrophizing and fortune telling. I can liquidate some assets. There are debt consolidation services I can use. I will stop being profligate in my spending. Here's the countervailing idea: my finances are again secure. Positive, present tense. I'm making progress in, and elaborate as desired. And only record the countervailing ideas. And I'm not entirely joking when I say you can burn the list of the mental poison that you get out of your head. If you're, kind of an objective, very logical person, then pitching it in the trash can is probably good. If you're a kinesthetic kind of person that likes action and likes to feel things, or if you're a visual kind of person that wants to see that sucker go up in flames and see it burn, then that might be a good way to get it out of your system. Become aware of the cognitive distortions you are composing in your mind. Go over the list again. Write down every negative thought and warped belief during the day when you have it. So that's what you do during the day. You're working along, you have this negative thought, you say, well, that's pretty bad. Write it down. That's all you have to do. Just write it down. And then that night after work, when you have some alone time, you can process it, write down the countervailing idea, and then when you have enough of them, just record your audio and reprogram yourself. So I like what Daniel Burrus said, that hindsight only brings lament. If you think, I should have sold my house, I should have sold my stocks, I should have done such and such, or to quote Wayne Dyer, if you're shooting all over yourself, you're only going to be sad. The only thing that you have any kind of influence on is the future and your future. If you're just being busy won't help. Being accurate, getting it down correctly in the journal will be helpful for you, because then if you're accurate, then you can track from that on into solutions for the future. Brian Tracy said that maturity is when you realize no one is coming to the rescue. If you're an adult and your parents are deceased, mommy and daddy are not coming to bail you out of this. It's not happening. It's only you. And if you have a spouse that you have a wonderful relationship, it's still not the spouse. The spouse is not going to bail you out. You're going to have to get into your head, find out what the mental poison is, get it out, and work your way through it. You are the only one that can do anything inside your own head. So I told you about the patient as a remarkable example of a mental filter. So I talked with this woman last week. I began the appointment by phone with my usual open-ended question, which is, so how are you doing? To which she replied, I'm doing like crap. I'm more depressed, I have more anxiety, and when I wake up, the anxiety just kicks me in the face and I can't get back to sleep. I just want to move to, and she listed the state, and die there. That's how she was doing. So here's her psych history. She had one TMS treatment. I know because I gave it to her. She said it hurt too much, and went on and got a course of electroconvulsive therapy or shock treatment from a different MD. I don't do it anymore because with the techniques that we've got, I don't think hardly anybody needs it. But in formal allopathic psychiatry, it's generally considered the gold standard treatment for depression. So she had the gold standard treatment for depression, lasted about 4 months, and then she went back to total misery. Reviewing her history, no antidepressant has worked, no anti-anxiety medication has worked, Klonopin didn't work, Valium didn't work, even at a respectable dose, and ECT did not work. So you have to begin to wonder how much of this woman's misery is from the mental poison going on in her head versus how much is her neurotransmitters that need tuning up. And believe me, I've been trying to tune those neurotransmitters so far without success. So I asked her, what are your sources of stress? She said, I'm scared of getting COVID-19 and I don't want to die. How many of us does that pertain to? I mean, I don't want to get COVID-19 and die, but she's spending a lot of her time thinking about it. She says, all I do is stay inside, sit on the couch and watch television, but I am knitting. It's not like I'm not doing anything, but it gets to me. I just feel so stressed. Well, what could she be doing? She could be going out. She could be taking walks. She could be doing something with something that she's got that you are not going to believe. But no, she's staying inside, sitting on the couch, watching television. That's not a good way to do it. It's just my worrying. I'm worrying about the virus, worrying if I'm ever going to feel good. My depression's gotten worse. I'm sure part of it is the fact that I have to stay inside. Does she? Is she incarcerated? Does she have an ankle bracelet on because she committed some kind of crime and she's on house arrest? No, she does not have to stay inside. She is choosing to stay inside. And she has less contact with her husband on some days as she perceives it. So I asked her, so what's not stressing? Guess what she told me? She's got food, she's got shelter, she has climate control, no leaks, no termites, no serious worries about finances. She doesn't even have to work. She has enough clothes. She has online shopping if she needs it. She has good furniture. She has animal companionship. She has a nice place to have people over after COVID-19 is over. Her retirement is secure. She has access to medicine and healthcare. And she said, I'm not dealing with a lack of wisdom, which I thought was profound. In other words, she's got some life experience. The problem is she's not using it very well. And here are a few more. These, you're not going to believe this. She's got nice clothes. She has dental care. She commented, I can chew with my own teeth. She's off her previous unhelpful antidepressant. And as I was listing a thing that she's grateful for, she says, I have a nice car, a BMW Z3 convertible and a Jeep Wrangler. Now, I asked, how can you be depressed if you have a BMW Z3 convertible, the James Bond car, not with rocket launchers, but the BMW Z3 convertible, and you can drive it around on a beautiful, sunny, 70, 80 degree Evansville day? How can you be sad and depressed and anxious if you can do that? And the answer is, it's difficult. And there's the convertible, and there's the patient in it. You will notice that you cannot see her, and you will also notice you can't see her face. And I also cut off the street sign. I asked her if I could show this, and she said yes, and I have her complete permission to share this story. And hopefully she'll be on the webinar tonight, and we'll get some benefit out of this. So I said, what are some other things that you're grateful for? And please write it down, which she did. And the husband sent it to me in email. She's grateful for her husband, her children, her cat, her good friends, Facebook, so she can stay in contact with people, clean clothes. Heck, her husband even does the laundry for her. She can walk alone, unaided, sunshine. She can play the flute. She can drive a stick shift. She's got good eyesight. I have all my limbs. She's on Medicare, which she's grateful for. She's grateful that she doesn't play golf. I'll have to ask her about that. She's staying in contact with her German family. She's still breathing, and I don't have dementia. That's plenty to be grateful about. So, you want to focus on that? Or do you want to focus on, I'm concerned about COVID-19? Here are the take-home points. I told you this before. I'm going to emphasize it again. What you focus on expands. And you can either rewire the brain positively or negatively. You need to be aware of what's going on. And awareness is the first of those A, B, C, D, E, F, G's points. And you get awareness from writing it down in a journal and thinking on paper. So let's look for some good in the COVID-19 pandemic. Number one, there's more time with the family. There's catch-up time. Now, if you got a lousy family or a lousy relationship with your family, then it's just going to stretch you more. But you're not a rock. You can move. You can change. You can get some new skills, and we'll be talking about that. And the other thing that I want to share with you is this concept of the 98% rule. The 98% rule says if you are a parent, by the time they are 18, you will have spent 98% of the time of their life with you. In other words, you only got 2% more for the rest of your life. If you're a kid, 98% of the time that you're going to spend with your parents is before the age of 18, before you leave home. This is a priceless opportunity. Please don't squander it. So in terms of dealing with troublesome rugrats, mischievous munchkins, complaining spouses, and so forth, I cannot do any better than recommend this book called Whale Done by Ken Blanchard. I frequently do to my patients. And the story goes that this middle-level manager was seeing the whale show at SeaWorld, and he was completely bumfuzzled in terms of how the trainers could get the whale to do those tricks, and he could not get his employees to behave and do what he told them. So after the whale show, he sat down and he was able to talk to the whale trainer. And the whale trainer said, well, there are only three things that you can do with a whale. You can give the whale a positive response, you can give the whale a neutral response, or you can let the whale try it again. So the way they get them to jump on command is they've got a rope that they put at the bottom of the fish tank. And then they raise it, but it's not high enough that the fish could swim under the rope. It's not that high. The fish can only swim over the rope. Then they bring the rope up a little bit more. Then they bring it up a little bit more. Now the fish can swim over the rope and under the rope. Trainer is down at the end of the pool, and when the whale swims over the rope, they get a fish. If the whale swims under the rope, they don't get a fish. So that's positive, neutral, and redirect. Now, with humans, there is another option. You can give them a negative response. You can put them in timeout. You can take away their Nintendo or their Xbox or their video games or their computer or their iPad. Or you can put them in the corner and say you're going to be in timeout for a while. That's the negative response. You can't take away a whale's Nintendo. You can't put a whale in timeout. I mean, you can't punish a whale. You can punish people. You can give them negative content, but not a whale. And it's interesting what total control those whale trainers have over the whales with just those three things: positive, neutral, and redirect. Now let's continue. Positive responses where you want to live. On the other hand, I suggest that you master the negative response with kids. And I see some pretty wild and crazy ADHD kids. They're great kids. I love them to death. But sometimes they're like the kind of kids that the parents will tear their hair out over. And sometimes it's like, I'm not gonna, and you can't make me. Or they have hissy fit meltdowns, or they keep bopping their sister or their brother. And the parents have got to get control of it. And spanking is not the option. So Thomas Phelan, back in 2004, wrote this book, 1, 2, 3 Magic. And I will tell you three things. If you see this done in the wild, as it were, it's most likely being done wrong. This is what I've seen. I've seen parents and their kids at the grocery store, and they'll say, that's one. You've already failed. That's it. You messed it up. You're not even going to get to 3 and get any benefit because you messed it up with 1. Or that's 1, that's 2, and then sharp bargain. Now, I told you, little Johnny, if you keep going, we're going to get to 3, and there's going to be a consequence. No. This is how you do 1, 2, 3 magic. You have a come to Jesus meeting with the kid, and everybody in the home, everybody agrees that it's going to be done this way. And you tell the kid, you're going to get 3 chances. And if you are messing up and not obeying me, I'm going to say very calmly, that's 1. And if you keep doing it, I'm going to say, that's 2. If you keep doing it, I'm going to say, that's 3. Timeout. And then they go into timeout, 1 minute per year of age. That's how you get control of it. You say, well, that sounds too good to be true. This is what people have said. One of my patients' mothers said it was frighteningly effective. This woman was brilliant and a member of Mensa. She couldn't believe how well it worked. And then to quote my youngest son, who mysteriously disappeared this book from our family home. So my first wife went to rebuy it at Barnes & Noble with the kids in tow. And he said, when he saw the book, that book. I hate that book because I was using it and it was really effective. So it will make an impact. Trust me. For spouses, I'm not going to belabor this. Gary Chapman wrote a great book called The 5 Love Languages, and he talked about there are basically only 5 ways that people really like to have love expressed. One is words of affirmation. I love you. You're great. I'm so happy I married you. Acts of service, bringing them, washing their car, doing their laundry. As my patient, her husband is washing her laundry. That's an act of service. Receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. Those are the 5 love languages. And again, this is for let's get your life tuned up in all domains, including the home, including your kids, including your spouse. And this is the way I suggest you use it. There's a survey in there that you can find out what your love language is. You need to know what your love language is. Your spouse needs to take it, and you each need to know what the other's love language is. And if that happens, I think things will be fantastic in your relationship. So I'm moving rapidly to the close. Here are some tips to cope. How to virtually end isolation. So this is a photographer, DeWitt Jones. He's a National Geographic photographer, or was. He's now retired. And he said that whenever National Geographic sent him out to photograph, they said, find what's right with the world. And so he did. And you can go right here, celebratewhat'sright.com/TEDx, and you can see his talk. And he does celebrate what's right with the world. We should start celebrating what's right with our world. We don't have to be photographers to do that. Like my patient, she's got her limbs, she's got her teeth, she can chew, she's not demented. I mean, she's got a whole lot more than Mitchell, who doesn't have the use of his limbs and horribly burned and so forth. Now, if you got the Rugrats at home, the mischievous Munchkins, hey, Disney is available streaming fireworks free. All you have to do is tune in. You can look at the Disney Magic Moments video series free. If you're a photographer, you can learn photography from the Nikon pros at the Nikon school free. I've paid $150 for this course before over 1.5 days. This is free. If you're a Miley Cyrus fan, you can look at her concerts and all these other people. Just go to Google, type in free concerts COVID and see what pops up. Maybe your taste is opera. Well, the Metropolitan Opera in New York City has free streaming operas that they're broadcasting. Museums are offering tours. The Louvre, the Van Gogh Museum, the Vatican Museum, the Musée d'Orsay, which is the palace of French Impressionist art. So just go to google.com, type in free tours of museums online. I promise they're there. I just did it this weekend, and this is the page that you'll get, and there are clickable links on those. This is a clickable link to a 360-degree tour of the Sistine Chapel. You can stand here and look all the way to the back and all the way around, and you can look up and you can look down. It's amazing. I'll probably never get to the Sistine Chapel. I've got other things I want to do, but at least you can see it that way, and the quality is incredible. You say, well, I'm not into all that culture stuff. I just like quilting. Well, there are 10 free online classes on quilting. You say, well, I don't like quilting, but I do like sports. Heck, MLB, Major League Baseball, has the 2018-2019 games online to watch for free. I mean, you really have no reason to be bored if you're a sports fan. And here's something more for sports, for my hunting and fishing buddies. There's probably never been a better time to get your gun out and maintain it and lube it up than when you're at home right now. So again, you want to focus on what you can do or what you can't do. The only reason to be bored is if you choose to be bored. It's your choice. You write it down in your journal. You make some decisions. You run it through the 5 Ps. You think about the learned optimism. If you choose to be bored, you will be bored. Social distancing and the threat of danger response is mutually contradictory. When hazardous conditions prevail, us humans want to clump together, which is the worst possible thing we can do now. So what Daniel Burrus suggests is not using the model of social distancing. We hear social distancing, so forget social distancing. He talks about physical distancing. In one of my Hyperfax newsletters that I sent out about 5-6 weeks ago about things to look out for COVID-19, I talked about virtual happy hours. And you don't have to drink alcohol to have a happy hour. Schedule time with some of your friends. You don't have to have Zoom. Do it on FaceTime. Do it on Skype. Google has a video calling app that you can use if you're on the Android platform. Have some contact with other people. Carl Jung said this: as far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. David Dunn, years ago, over 100 years, wrote this book, Try Giving Yourself Away. I discovered it in my father's library. And the gist of Try Giving Yourself Away is not being a totally codependent sucker that other people will take advantage of, but it is reaching out to your fellow man, being of service. I have a patient right now. I don't think he'd mind my mentioning this. He's had some issues over the years. He's had some horrible traumas. One of the most uplifting things he's been able to do is serve meals to the homeless at some of the shelters here in town. He's giving himself away. And in fact, when you look at this book on Amazon, you will see it has been selected by scholars as being culturally important and as part of the knowledge base of civilization as we know it. I think we ought to acquaint ourselves with that book if it's part of the knowledge base of civilization. Finally, Daniel Burrus says this is a defining moment. Are we going to squander it? Are we going to squander the opportunities that we have to improve our relationships with our kids, where we will be spending 98% of their entire life with us up until 18? Will we do that? Will we reach out to our spouse? Will we improve our relationships? Will we get out of our heads and start thinking and become more rational in our beliefs? I mean, it's up to you. It's up to us. And we can squander it, and we can sit and worry and be afraid that the COVID-19 virus is going to get us and kill us, and we just want to move to such and such a state to die. That's one way to live, in the corner, sucking on your thumb, totally regressed, and focused on all the negative and the terrible things in life. Or you can get positive, and I've told you tonight how to do that. So you can focus on these things: misery, fear, anger, worry, regret, cognitive distortions, lack, financial problems, job insecurity. Or you can focus on these: good health, roof over your head, spouse, kids, maybe grandkids, business friends and colleagues, a relatively free market system. I used to say a free market system. Now I'm saying it's a relatively free market system. Liberty, living in the U.S., current and expanding growth of scientific knowledge. Maybe a vaccine coming. Remdesivir, the antiviral from Gilead that seems to be helpful in COVID-19 infections, and that they have 1 million plus doses available right now. We can focus on that, or we can focus on the negative. I close with 2 quotes. Ancient Chinese proverb. This was reputed to be said by Eleanor Roosevelt, and also Robert Burns quoted it in one of his poems, but if you track it back, it's an ancient Chinese proverb. It's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. And finally, I'm going to end with this. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. And that is what I wanted to share with you tonight. Thanks for attending. It's great to have you here. And now I'm going to see if I'm smart enough to figure out how to stop SlideShare and get back with my friendly minions there on the screen. There they come. And take questions. And I have nothing to do tonight except sit here and do Q&A. So we can go for a while. I'm sorry this went over the hour. It's the first and only time I have ever given this presentation, maybe the only time I will ever give it. So sorry it went a little long. Elizabeth, what questions do we have?
Actually, there's a lot of compliments. There's just a lot of people who found and are finding it inspiring and always worth the time to listen to you, Dr. Cady. I would agree. And okay, and a chat. Actually, no questions.
Okay.
Great presentation, positive presentation. Sue Amon says the overtime was terrific, and well, it's true. That's how I was feeling too. Is that everybody on this call or on this live stream is definitely going to get off of it feeling so much better. And,
well, great.
Yeah. So, does anyone have another one too from Andrea? Really, thank you very much, Dr. Cady. Let's see if there's anything else there. Yeah, really. I mean, I was writing madly and then kept reminding myself that you have it on SlideShare.
Yes, it's there right now.
They're so amazing. And you're going to send out, I'm assuming, just to kind of do a little bit of admin there as follow-up is, as with the first live stream and webinar, you're going to send out links and the recording. And please share with other people, because this is all about letting more people find, optimism and hope through knowledge and hanging out with really positive people and the great doctors. So this was great. I filled about 8 pages of stuff, reminding myself as well. And we all need a reminder. And I do know, as a coach myself, people say, oh my God, blah, 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 the sky is falling. And I ask them always, how much news, how much TV are you watching with the news?
Elizabeth, let me interrupt you. I just saw a question from one of my colleagues, Dr. Lamont, come across the screen, and I did notice it, and I read it. It says, will we automatically get links to, I think it was the slides. So what I would suggest is take a moment and write down slideshare.net/LKDMD. They are there. So you don't even have to wait for me to send out a link. Go there. And for the replay, if you're not one of our Facebook fans for our Cady Wellness Institute page, you can go to Cady Wellness Institute on Facebook, and believe me, when this video is available, it will be there and it will be linked. And so you can go there. And then as Elizabeth suggested, if all of you would like it, I will send out a brief email saying, here's the link, here's the webinar.
That's great. And there's actually a question from Sue, and it's one of the ones I was thinking, neurolinguistic, NLP for neurolinguistic programming. Is it a pseudoscience?
Great question.
That's a great question.
It's the kind of question I would anticipate from a woman that's that bright. I don't believe it's a pseudoscience. It has been criticized as not having statistically valid documentation. But on the other hand, how are you going to argue with somebody walking across hot coals and not getting burned? I mean, there's got to be something to it. And with the studying of NLP that I've been doing, there are some very effective techniques, the swish pattern, the parts integration, and so forth. It's not hocus pocus. It's not hypnosis. It's basically a form of therapy, but it looks at neuro, the brain, language, like we were talking about, and programming. And so all the stuff that I was talking about tonight, Seligman's learned optimism and his positive psychology, my chapter, Without Your Head, You're Dead, that's all having to do with looking at the language, how we're talking to ourselves, and then how we're programming ourselves. So no, I don't think it's a pseudoscience.
That's a great answer. I'm seeing a whole bunch over here as well. Oh, wow, there's lots. Okay, most of them want to make sure that people could send it and share it. And I think it says here, quantum, NLP and quantum go together. I think I know what that means, but that's obviously maybe an internal.
That may be from one of my NLP friends.
I was just going to say that might be an internal kind of a comment and share. Replay. Yeah, I think, and has anyone else got any other questions? Because all of this will be available, because we want to make sure that Dr. Cady is able to help as many of us and as many people that we care about as possible during these challenging yet optimistic times.
Right. So, Elizabeth, before I go, I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you for your charming emceeing and helping me navigate this technology. I'm always in your debt for this. Thank you so much. And
thank you. Always fun. Yes, and
for everybody that attended, thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone. And yes, next Monday as well. And please reach out if links don't work or anything else. Please, we're here. We're real people, and we're here to make sure that we can get us, as I said, get as many people how to learn how to be optimistic through these challenging times. So we're here to offer support and help. So thank you again, Dr. Cady. You're awesome as usual. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next Monday.
Yep.
Bye for
next
now.
Monday, how to do it to yourself, treatment of depression at home. Not as crazy as it sounds. I promise. I'm not going to go fringe on you.
Thank you again. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.